A locker room lawsuit. A high school student is suing a Pennsylvania school district, saying his privacy rights were violated by sharing a locker room with a transgender student.
Civil rights lawyers in Philadelphia have just filed a first-of-its-kind lawsuit in the Commonwealth, one that questions the constitutionality of a Montgomery County school district policy.
My client is standing up not only for himself, but for others who feel bullied.
The suit alleges an 11th grade boy at Boyertown Area High School had his right to privacy violated by the district, that under Title IX he felt sexually harassed when late last year he and other male students were forced to start sharing a locker room with a transgender student. That student, a girl, but identifies as a boy.
It's an egregious violation for this school to just brush off these students and tell them that their feelings don't matter and to make it as natural as they possibly can.
Every single student's feelings matter. Their privacy rights matter. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing too much focus on just the feelings of the transgender student.
Lawyers who filed that lawsuit here in Philadelphia federal court say their goal is simple: to get the Boyertown Area School District to change its policy back, allowing students only of the same anatomical gender to share a locker room space. The Boyertown Area School District refused to comment on its locker room policy, saying in a very brief statement it has received demand letters from attorneys to change its policy, but, quote, a complaint has not been officially served to the Boyertown Area School District. In the suit filed, the district has until April 4th to officially respond.
Okay, is this person a male or female? I mean, how hard is this? Oregon judge grants right to be a gender. No gender. Okay, it says clothing, makeup, emojis, is that how you pronounce it? I don't know. And now legal status. The genderless movement is firing ahead fast and furious, while those who cleave to traditional views are considered anachronistic at best and bigoted at worst. So, what are we saying here? We're saying if you accept reality, XX, XY, nothing in between, if you accept that reality, then you're a bigot. But if you accept and embrace the fairyland of cultural Marxism, then you're not a bigot.
A man who is carrying a sword while dressed as the Batman villain the Joker has been arrested in Virginia. According to police, authorities had received several complaints about a suspicious male wearing a black cape and carrying a sword. Quickly after arriving at the scene, officers with the Winchester Police Department had arrested 31-year-old Jeremy Putnam. Putnam has been detained and charged with wearing a mask in public, a felony that is punishable by up to 5 years in jail under Virginia law.
Hundreds of people crowded into Club Cameo found themselves running for their lives when a fight broke out shortly after 1 a.m. and several men pulled out guns and started firing. Police Chief Elliot Isaac.
And my understanding is that last night they had security on scene. They were wanding people to determine if they had firearms. However, at least more than one individual was able to get inside the establishment with a firearm.
27-year-old O'Brien Spikes of Cincinnati, pictured here, was killed. More than a dozen were shot.
I ask all Cincinnati to pray for the victims and their families at this time, especially those who are still fighting to cling on to life.
Unlike the shooting massacre at Orlando's Pulse nightclub, Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley says this shooting is not terrorism-related.
However, to the victims, what difference does it make? They've been terrorized by gun violence, innocent victims. It's important for everyone to understand people were just going to have a good time and ended up getting shot.
The Saturday night party at Cameo is known as Grown and Sexy Night. The party usually goes until 4 a.m. Police say the crowd was made up of mostly 18 and 19-year-olds. The club has a history of violence. There was a shooting inside on New Year's Day in 2015 and a stabbing just a few weeks ago.
We need people to have courage to come forward and to identify the shooter or shooters in this case. We must solve this crime and we must bring the shooters to justice.
Cincinnati police are on the hunt tonight for more than one shooter and are treating this case as a homicide investigation. Elaine now comes the task of finding out how several guns made it inside past security guards at the entrance.
According to CNN, 16 of 29 inmates are still on the run after they made an audacious escape by tunneling underneath the Mexican prison wall. Tamaulipas State Secretariat of Security said Saturday that the inmates escaped Thursday from a prison in Ciudad Victoria. Following the escape, security officials destroyed unauthorized shelters constructed by inmates on prison grounds and searched cells. In reaction to those efforts, a riot broke out in the prison Friday night. 3 inmates were stabbed to death and 1 was injured. The tunnel was sealed with concrete on Saturday.
We want to turn overseas tonight to a massive day of protest in Russia. A wave of anti-corruption rallies across the country, the largest in years. Demonstrators clashing with police in Moscow, hundreds arrested, a vocal opponent of Russian President Vladimir Putin detained. And new questions being raised after surveillance video appears to show the assassination of another Putin critic. Here's ABC's Jennifer Eccleston.
Tonight, Russia in turmoil. A stunning and rare display, thousands erupting in protest. Russian police in riot gear cracking down, ripping apart crowds with nightsticks, smacking protesters in the heart of Moscow. The government calling the rallies illegal. At least 500 arrested, many forced into police vans. This man punched as he's led away. The demonstrations all across Russia accusing President Vladimir Putin's government of widespread corruption. The organizers of the anti-Putin protest, high-profile Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, also hauled into custody. Supporters trying to block police as they take him to jail. Tonight, he's behind bars. But challenging authority in Russia is risky. On Thursday, this surveillance video capturing the execution-style killing of Putin foe Denis Voronikov in Ukraine. Kiev calling it a Kremlin hit, Moscow calling that absurd. Another Putin critic, a Russian lawyer, critically injured in a suspicious plunge from his Moscow apartment. Russia hasn't seen protests like today's in years. The police response swift and heavy-handed. The Kremlin sure to find such public anger unsettling and not easy to ignore.
Iran striking back. While critics say the Iranian nuclear deal unlocked billions of dollars for the regime in Tehran, they have now slapped sanctions on us, hitting 15 American companies, which Iran claims support terrorism. The firms include ITT, Raytheon, even truck maker Oshkosh, and can you believe this? The real estate company Remax. This after the U.S. announced its latest sanctions on Iran last month. And now Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is set to visit Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Tuesday. That means both nations are further cementing ties between Tehran and Moscow. So how worried should we be? John Bolton is a former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. So, Ambassador, what about this partnership between Putin and Rouhani? It seems it's only escalating and that they're getting closer.
Well, I think Russia and Iran have been acting very closely together in the Middle East for the last 10 or more years. Certainly, Russia has repeatedly given political cover to Iran's nuclear weapons program through multiple encounters in the UN Security Council and more broadly. They've worked very closely together to support their mutual ally, the Assad regime in Syria. In fact, I think it's pretty clear that if it weren't for Russia and Iran, and Hezbollah, the Shiite terrorist group in Lebanon, basically supported by Iran, that Assad would have fallen years ago. So I think this meeting really underlines the strength of the relationship that already exists. There are other possible areas of cooperation here, both Russia and Iran, big oil and gas exporters. I think in many ways Russia would love to find a way to get together with OPEC, or at least parts of OPEC, so that they could collude together in when to restrict production and raise international oil prices. They've got a lot to talk about, and I think the center of the conversation is how to continue to minimize American influence in the Middle East.
The United States-Israeli relationship is closer than ever before, according to Israeli envoy to the United States, Ron Dermer. In a speech during AIPAC's annual policy conference, Dermer said, quote, "For the first time in many years, perhaps even many decades, there's no daylight between our two governments," end quote. His comments come just hours after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today denied that he's reached a consensus regarding settlement construction with the White House. A report by Channel 2 claimed that Israel may agree to limit settlement construction in return for permission to build a new residential area in the West Bank for the residents of the demolished Amona settlement. Netanyahu has promised to build a new settlement for the residents of Amona, who had their homes demolished earlier this year after the Israeli Supreme Court determined that they had built illegally on privately owned Palestinian land. Though Israel and Washington have yet to come to an agreement regarding settlement construction, it was rumored that the Trump administration has proposed that Israel refrain from expanding settlements beyond the 3 major settlement blocks in Area C, and that construction be confined to an annual quota. This comes barely a week after Special Envoy for International Negotiations Jason Greenblatt held high-level meetings in the region with Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
Well, the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas has closed down a crossing south of the Gaza Strip following the assassination of one of its senior officials. Hamas has announced in a statement that the Erez crossing will be closed for an indefinite period of time while it investigates the murder of Mazen Farah. The Palestinian commander was killed by unknown gunmen on Friday. Hamas officials say the attackers are suspected to be Israeli collaborators. The organization has vowed to take revenge if Israel is behind the murder.
Hamas maintains that only Israel would have had something to gain from the death and is vowing retaliation.
بالشكل والمضمون، والمستفيد الوحيد من عملية اغتيال هذا المجاهد لا توجد جهة إلا الاحتلال، والجهات الأمنية تتابع وتدقق في الموضوع. ننتظر ما تسفر عنه هذه التحقيقات، لكن نحن نقول لا جهة مستفيدة من اغتيال أحد مجاهدي الشعب الفلسطيني إلا الاحتلال.
هذه العمليات لا تثنينا ولا تؤخرنا ولا تعطلنا. سنضرب بيد من حديد على كل العملاء والخونة سواء كانوا في أجهزة أمنية أو في غيرها حتى نحصن شعبنا ورجال المقاومة من هذه الجرائم المنكرة. يلا الله يعطيك.
Hundreds of others marched in Fukaha's honor later in the day. His father made it clear he also blames Israel for his son's death and promised vengeance.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservative Party has won a regional election in the western state of Saarland on Sunday, boosting her prospects of winning a 4th term in the national election in September. Merkel's Christian Democrats strengthened their position as the largest party in the state, which has a population of about 1 million. The win has dealt a blow to their centre-left Social Democrat rivals, which has seen a recent surge in popularity under new leader Martin Schulz. The CDU won 40.7% of the vote, while the SPD garnered 29.6%. The outcome of Sunday's election in Saarland is being watched for signs of voter sentiment ahead of the September 24th general election.
L'Union européenne va mourir. Parce que les peuples n'en veulent plus. Nous vérifions une fois de plus que les empires orgueilleux et hégémoniques sont destinés à périr. Nous allons changer d'Europe. L'idée européenne mise à mal par ces fossoyeurs que sont les fédéralistes va se ressourcer, se revivifier dans l'Europe des peuples, des coopérations et des nations avec nos alliés européens. Je me félicite que grâce à nous, grâce à vous qui êtes là aujourd'hui, grâce à tous ceux qui soutiennent notre mouvement de redressement national, français, de métropole, d'outre-mer ou de l'étranger, Ces mondialistes nous regardent aujourd'hui avec crainte.
Back now with a new and shocking stat on the percentage of jobs expected to be snapped up by robots, and sooner than you might think. Here's ABC's Stephanie Ramos.
Tonight, Amazon embracing the robot revolution. That's CEO Jeff Bezos. His company already using automation to ship your packages. That's just the start. Machines could take more than 38% of U.S. jobs in about 15 years, according to a new report from PricewaterhouseCoopers. Industries most at risk: transportation, storage, food service, and hospitality. Prototypes to deliver your room service, driverless cars to deliver you, and semi-trucks to deliver your beer. All of it in the works. And remember those carrier jobs that were saved?
The carrier has decided to stay in Indiana, invest more than $16 million.
That investment will automate the plant, which Carrier says will ultimately mean fewer jobs. But the Treasury Secretary confident automation won't hurt American workers.
In terms of artificial intelligence taking over American jobs, I think we're like so far away from that not even on my radar screen.
But tell that to baristas. This startup already putting them out of business. As for jobs least likely to be replaced by robots, ones that require high-level thinking skills like teachers and some healthcare professionals.
Thousands have evacuated low-lying areas of Australia's tropical northeast on Monday. A powerful cyclone is expected to cross the coast of Queensland along a 100-kilometre stretch. The cyclone was trudging over the Pacific Ocean as a Category 3 storm. Wind gusts have reached up to 165 kilometers per hour, but it's expected to hit 260 when it reaches land.
And in the United States, a big storm has rolled in across the south of the country, bringing with it strong winds and hail. The states of Texas and Oklahoma were hit by the storm system yesterday, and there were reports of damage to property. Police say hail the size of softballs fell across the region. And in Oklahoma, this funnel cloud was spotted forming near the town of Ada, southeast of Oklahoma City. The National Weather Service has warned that the storms will continue, as will the hail and strong, damaging winds.
The shifting sands of Lake Michigan are transforming its shoreline, faster now, scientists say, than at any time in recent history.
A few years ago, this went out basically to where those rocks are. And so what we're seeing today is a result of higher lake levels, low ice cover, and then waves like we have on the shoreline right now. And those are some of the main processes that are driving the change.
This is Illinois Beach north of Chicago in 1963. And here it is today, a sliver of its former self. As it has shrunk by more than 200 meters since 1939, that sand has migrated south to Waukegan, transforming a ribbon of sand into a surging landmass. And it's not just happening here. With rising water levels and more frequent storms, scientists say coastal erosion is a worldwide phenomenon that seems to be accelerating. So the Illinois Department of Natural Resources is deploying a novel device, a giant electromagnetic ring dangling from a helicopter to measure the depth of sand along Lake Michigan from Wisconsin to Indiana. They plan to use the results, along with pictures taken over the years, to develop ways to stabilize the coastline, perhaps by adding sand barriers or the pricey process of trucking in new sand.
This is the Dog Beach of Evanston, Illinois, where the pampered pets of Chicago's North Shore come to play. It once extended 25 meters into the water. This spring, it vanished, swallowed by Lake Michigan.
It's Europe's most active volcano and is one of the only 16 known as a decade volcano. That means scientists have to closely monitor it due to its frequent eruptions and proximity to populated areas. Italian researchers on the island of Sicily are now tracking the causes of Mount Etna's latest eruptions to map its effects on nearby areas. They're using the latest imaging technology to study the mountain and its craters. The results and new imagery obtained will be used for a 3D construction of Etna, which will enable researchers to monitor and better predict future volcanic eruptions.
During this day, we perform a thermal image, GPS measurement, and lava flow mapping, also using drone to better understand how the flow field evolved during this eruption.
Mount Etna has been largely dormant for the last 2 years, but it sprung to life in February. Its last major eruption was in 1992. With the mountain rumbling again, scientists are now trying to figure out if another massive eruption is imminent at one of the world's most dangerous volcanoes.
Nearly 600,000 Americans are homeless. Many have health problems and no access to care. In Boston, a nationally renowned team of street doctors is doing something about it. Jim Axelrod paid a visit to the doctor in charge.
How are you, by the way? You're here.
It's Friday morning in Boston, which means Dr. Jim O'Connell is making his rounds.
So what are we going to do for you? What's up today?
He might be a little more comfortable inside a warm examining room.
God, I've got cold to the bone right now.
But that's not where his patients are. O'Connell is Boston's only doctor left, still making house calls to the homeless.
Anything changed since last night? I feel like I'm a country doctor in the middle of the city.
O'Connell was a 30-year-old medical student at Harvard when he passed up an oncology fellowship for a 1-year position heading up a new nonprofit called Boston Healthcare for the Homeless. 1 year turned into a career.
You start to realize that I'm just a doctor, and what I can do is I can get to know you and ease your suffering just as I would as an oncologist.
What better population to heal?
You could not find a more grateful population.
32 years later, the program he started is now the country's largest of its kind.
Ooh, that one hurt, didn't it?
No. I did, but I'm not complaining.
O'Connell dispenses just about everything, from stitches to the arm.
You're clean. You want a Band-Aid?
To surgery for the soul.
Come in. Will you come in? Will you do that? She wants to come in.
If they can no longer be treated on the street, O'Connell finds them a temporary treatment bed in a shelter.
This man is unbelievable. This is my doctor. He's been my doctor for life.
Do you ever sit and think, I know what I'd be making 30 years into an oncologist's career?
No, I never think about that anymore. It's not a smart economically, but it was a great soul move.
Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome, Adam.
Some things are more valuable than money. Just ask the doctor who gets everything from patients.
You're on our team.
Who have nothing at all to give.
That's the way I like it.